Our protagonist was hired to become the magic tutor of a wealthy girl, but the catch was that he was nothing more than a commoner mercenary. The girl's father agreed to bring him in, since no noble instructor was willing to take on his daughter. That was because Yahello was incredibly rude and had a habit of hitting everyone around her. At first glance, that blonde brat looked like nothing more than a spoiled child. And when Derek found out his student was like that, he went straight to her father. "Tell me, what level of authority will I have over your daughter?" The girl's father, who happened to be the Grand Duke of that nation, granted him full authority. You could hear the servants crying in fear of Yahello from a distance. The girl was basically spreading chaos, breaking everything and kicking the mansion staff around. And when her new instructor showed up, she didn't hold back either. The daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country welcomed Derek by throwing a bucket of filthy water at him. She literally dumped trash on him, guys. No one ever dared punish her, simply because she was the Duke's daughter. But Derek, yeah, he wasn't built the same. He slapped the girl across the face without hesitation. Then, drawing his sword, he declared that he wasn't there to teach her. He was there as a commoner who took pleasure in eliminating nobles. This story is already going crazy, not gonna lie. The guy was poor and nobody expected anything from him just because he was young. But Derek was seriously built different. Now, to reach this point in the story, we need to rewind a bit. Our protagonist grew up in the city of Elbstein, where there was an old man who practiced magic. Derek ended up being raised by this old man, who taught him many things about magical power. Whenever he saw the boy using magic, the old man would say that magic was meant only for nobles. After a year, Derek had already become a one-star mage, and as always, the old man insisted that bloodline was everything, and that Derek didn't even need to push himself to become the strongest. One night, when Derek returned to their camp, the old man was dead. He had been beaten by guards after trying to steal a 2-star magic book. It was strange. Someone with no prospects at all attempting to steal a grimoire. Time passed, and 4 years later, he found a new master named Katia. She was a former instructor of a fallen noble family, and also a 3-star mage. Young Derek had become a mercenary, and since she was one too, they ended up working together. The boy learned a great deal from her, until one day she decided to give him some special guidance. Because he had great talent and strong ambitions, there was something he needed to understand. As a commoner, achieving his goals would be much harder, but Derek already knew that. At that moment, she asked him to close his eyes and feel the mana manifest, and he did exactly that, focusing deeply. He pushed himself hard. She realized he had an enormous amount of mana within him. Maybe it was due to his extensive combat experience as a mercenary. She was so shocked that she let out a loud scream. Everyone in the tavern rushed over to see what happened, and she kept saying it was shouting impossible while grabbing Derek by the arm. "Don't say anything, Derek. Just follow me." The mercenaries tried to figure out the source of the scream and that explosion-like noise, but Katia dragged our protagonist away while trying to stay discreet. They even slipped into an alley where she told him to listen carefully. Curious but respectful, he said he would pay close attention. Well, Derek, as you already know, nobles are extremely sensitive about their privileges, and magic is the most important thing to them. It's very rare for a commoner to reach even 1 star in magic, and those who reach 3 stars are even rarer. Only those who dedicate their entire lives to magic can reach higher levels, and that power you just used was a 2-star illusion spell. Since Derek showed great potential, she started taking him along on her missions, and taught him many additional spells. From time to time, she would share stories about how petty and selfish the upper class could be. And just like that, he spent a full year by her side until the day Katia had to leave. A noble household had hired her as a private instructor, and it was an opportunity she simply couldn't refuse. She was genuinely saddened to part ways with her student and partner, and the two of them said their goodbyes. Still, she left him with a 2-star magic book as a farewell gift. Derek wasted no time and headed straight to the Mercenary Guild to study it. Within a year, he had already mastered every spell inside that grimoire. At that point, he had become far stronger than most other mages. He was already 16 years old and had no intention of staying stuck where he was. Because of that, he approached the guildmaster to request a more significant assignment. The guild leader mentioned there was a request from the Grand Duke's family of the Plain Odira, a name Derek recognized due to their reputation. Clearly excited, the local guildmaster said this job could bring in a huge amount of money. "Listen, Derek, if we land this kind of job, we're talking serious gold here." "Alright, boss, just tell me what I need to do." Jaden explained that all they wanted was for a mercenary to hunt down some monsters around the Grand Duchy. Since it sounded far too easy, Derek immediately grew suspicious. He even said he wouldn't take the job and told the boss to find someone else. Derek had a strict rule. He didn't accept anything that felt off. However, the guildmaster kept insisting that Derek was the only mage in the guild, and the client specifically requested a mage for the mission. Since he was the only one capable of handling it, the boss practically begged him to accept. At that moment, the boss tossed him a coin and said it was a silver coin from Adele, something of considerable value. Derek looked at the coin and realized this was not something he could easily refuse. Money talks loud and clear, and that's how he ended up meeting his 3 clients: a man, a woman, and a young girl. The guildmaster introduced Derek to them, but the mustached old man didn't seem impressed at all. He even questioned whether a kid like him could really handle a mission involving monster hunting. Clearly nervous, Jaden quickly explained that the boy was already 16 and the strongest mage in the guild, which, to be fair, he was also the only one. The old man insisted that a task like this shouldn't be entrusted to a child. However, the woman stepped in and spoke with the mustached man. When they glanced at the girl, they noticed her serious expression, and that was enough for them to give Derek a chance. Soon after, they arrived at the Grand Duchy of Duplin, and without much effort, Derek wiped out all the monsters. The boy was so powerful that he barely even needed to rely on magic. He only used a small amount of lightning magic just to prove he could actually cast spells. Light flex, nothing too crazy. After that, he told the clients that the job for the day was already complete. The old man refused to admit he had been wrong, while the girl smiled slightly as if she knew she had chosen the right person. Later on, Derek returned to the tavern. One of his colleagues accused him of becoming a lapdog for the nobles. She even climbed onto a table, angrily confronting him, but the boss stepped in and said he had simply taken on a client's request. It wasn't a big deal, and there was no reason for her to be upset, especially since new clients paid very well. The girl asked how much they had been paid, and the boss raised 5 fingers. She assumed it meant 5 silver coins, but the boss shook his head. They had been paid 5 gold coins, and her mood instantly flipped. She even asked if they needed an archer to hunt goblins. Funny how ideology disappears the moment gold shows up. Later, after drinking way too much, she asked Derek how the job had gone. He explained that all he had to do was kill a few goblins, and even pointed out that he had been right. Those 3 had been lying. Jaden said it didn't matter, but Derek, being extremely detail-oriented, kept insisting that something was off. He even recalled the moment the woman handed over the payment. At that point, the boss called him over and reminded him that mercenaries don't dig too deeply into their clients' affairs. He was only supposed to complete the task and collect the reward. Jaden was right. This place was basically a jungle, and in a jungle, survival is all that matters. The next day, he returned to carry out another round of the mission and eliminate more monsters. Meanwhile, Jaden kept asking the old man where the rest of the payment was. He received 2 more coins and was instantly satisfied. He even praised the boy, saying he had done an excellent job. However, the mustached old man had something else to say, and mentioned that since they valued his abilities so highly, they had another request for Derek. Our protagonist grew curious about what it could be. For this new task, they would need to go to the Grand Duke's estate, and they were offering 15 gold coins. He even asked if they would accept the offer. Without any hesitation, our protagonist agreed. And just like that, they made their way to the Grand Duke's residence. Upon arrival, Jaden was left in awe by the sheer size and grandeur of the mansion. At that moment, the old man announced that he would formally introduce himself. He revealed that he was the head administrator of the Grand Duke's estate, and apologized for concealing his true position. Jaden responded that it wasn't an issue at all. The woman then introduced herself as Katerina, the head maid of the Grand Duke's household. Realizing they were dealing with high-ranking individuals, the mercenary leader immediately showed them proper respect. Derek already suspected they weren't ordinary people, but even he hadn't expected them to be this influential. At that moment, the girl stepped down from the carriage, and they became curious about her status. She removed her hood, letting her hair flow freely in the wind. Derek couldn't hide his curiosity. She then introduced herself as Selim of the Plain, and stated that she wished to appoint Derek as the magic tutor for her younger sister, Yahello. And so they spent some time within the Grand Duke's mansion. Inside the estate, one of the sons burst through the door, urging his father to see what his sister had done. The head of the family told his son, Rig, to behave with more composure. But Rig argued that Yahello had no sense of dignity at all, especially after hitting one of the maids. The poor woman stood there crying. The eldest son then told Rig to lower his voice when speaking to their father. However, more than 10 servants had already quit just in the past month because of Yahello, and he demanded to know how long their father would tolerate her behavior. At that moment, the older brother shouted for him to be silent, and even ordered Rig to leave. The boy made a bitter expression, clearly showing he didn't think highly of his sister. He even said that Yahello was nothing like Elaine, who was well-mannered, and suggested it would be better to simply set Yahello aside. The father responded that it wasn't his decision to make. Still, Rig insisted that she should be sent to a monastery, claiming she was tarnishing the family's reputation. At that moment, the father grabbed his head firmly and slammed his face straight onto the table. "I told you not to say things like that." With blood dripping from his nose, Rig muttered that when the time came, his father would have to make a choice, while the Duke stared at him with a cold, serious expression. Meanwhile, Elaine was escorting our boy Derek. She even asked if he had heard about her younger sister, and he replied that he had seen mentions of her in genealogy records. Elaine remarked that it was unfortunate her sister had not yet been properly introduced to the public. At that moment, the doors opened and Derek came face to face with Elaine's 2 brothers. The eldest welcomed his younger sister back, mentioning that she had been away for quite a while. With perfect manners, she replied that the journey had been exhausting and greeted her brother politely. Valerian let out an awkward chuckle and said he would go take care of his younger brother. Meanwhile, Derek quietly observed everything around him. Those were the 2 eldest sons of the Grand Duke, and he knew they were extremely powerful. And he also noticed a maid still in tears nearby. He couldn't help but think all of this was connected to Yahello. After entering the Grand Duke's chamber, the Duke asked how things were in the city of Elbstein. His daughter replied that the city was doing well, and mentioned that she had brought a magic tutor for Yahello. But when the Duke looked at the commoner standing before him, he didn't seem particularly convinced. Selim then stood up and said that if her father was busy, she could return another time. Just as they were about to leave, the Grand Duke asked the boy to stay. Our protagonist turned back, while the Duke continued writing a letter. "You are called Derek, and you are 16 years old, correct?" "Yes, that is correct, sir." The man then asked whether Derek could use magic, and he replied that he could only cast 1-star spells. "That won't work on me, boy. Humility does not always pass as virtue." Yeah, he got caught instantly. the boy realized right away that his lie had been exposed. This was the Grand Duke of the Plain, a 5-star mage. The boy apologized for his dishonesty, admitting his mistake. However, judging by his appearance, he didn't seem particularly powerful. The boy then openly admitted that he was a mercenary. Since no one was willing to teach his youngest daughter, he decided to give Derek the chance to take on the role of instructor. He even mentioned that she was being kept in a separate annex outside the mansion because she caused too much trouble. Derek then asked if he could raise a question, and the Grand Duke allowed it. He immediately stated that he was merely a mercenary hired for the job. He also confirmed whether Lady Diella truly wished to learn magic in order to become part of high noble society. Yes, that is correct. But why are you confirming something so obvious? That was because Derek had a sincere request, and the Grand Duke grew serious as he listened. Meanwhile, Diella was throwing plates around in every direction. She was the absolute nightmare of the mansion staff who were terrified of her. The girl even threatened a maid, saying that if she kept crying, she would kick her in the face. Later, the Grand Duke spoke with his daughter, asking why she had brought a commoner to take care of Diella. Looking slightly saddened, Esselin explained that the most renowned magic instructors had refused to teach Diella, and since Derek was a highly capable mercenary, she believed he might succeed in guiding her younger sister. She even mentioned that she had tested him and saw that he had a kind heart. However, the Grand Duke of Plyn argued that his daughter was too kind and always chose to see the good in people. From his perspective, Derek had grown up as a street mage and became a mercenary even before reaching adulthood. He then asked her if she truly believed someone raised in such conditions could have a good heart. Meanwhile, Derek was making his way to the annex to meet Diella. He arrived at the door and knocked. However, he heard a noise coming from inside, so he decided to open the door and greet the girl. He introduced himself as Derek, her new magic instructor. This was Diella Catherine of Plyn, the second daughter of the Plyn family. He stepped closer, and the girl gave him a sinister smile before suddenly throwing dirty water at him. Derek remained completely calm. The blonde burst into a wicked laugh and mocked him, asking, "What is this trash standing in front of me?" She even called him a sewer rat, and questioned how her father could hire a mercenary as her instructor. She dragged a chair, climbed onto it, and then threw another bucket of filthy water at him. She added that it suited him perfectly, since he was nothing more than a filthy sewer rat. And the insults just kept coming, guys. She continued to curse at him without stopping. However, he gave her a cold, serious look, sending a chill down her spine. In response, she told him not to look at her with such insolence and kicked him in the chest. That blow knocked him to the ground. She complained that he was disgusting and said she would have to change her shoes because of him. She even mocked that everything now smelled like urine because of the dirty water and threw more onto him. After sitting down, she declared that the sewer rat now understood his place and that he would never be allowed to teach her magic. Meanwhile, back in the Grand Duke's room, he felt slightly uneasy and recalled the boy's earlier request. According to Derek, resolving Lady Diella's behavior would be extremely difficult, and he had asked how much authority he would be granted. The man realized that this boy knew exactly what he was doing. Back in the present, Derek suddenly struck the girl across the face. She had been incredibly rude, and this was his way of disciplining her. She stared at him, clearly shaken and intimidated. "What? He just slapped me? Wake up, girl." At that moment, the scene shifted into a flashback from 3 years earlier. While speaking with his master, he asked what she would do if she had a stubborn student. Resting her hand on her chin, Katia said she would first try to embrace and accept them, understanding why they behaved that way. "Yes, master, but wouldn't that be too idealistic?" According to Katia, the essence of teaching was to guide students toward a better path. And if understanding failed, then instilling fear would be the next option. Back in the present, it was clear that Diella was genuinely afraid. He told her to treat others with respect and consideration, making it clear he would not repeat himself. At that moment, the girl stood up and slapped him back. She demanded to know how he dared strike the Grand Duke's daughter, but our boy responded with another slap in the exact same spot. "Listen carefully, girl. I won't say this again. When dealing with others, you will show respect." But she only laughed, a sharp and mocking laugh. Then she started shouting, calling for her servants. The head administrator rushed in, asking what Lady Diella required. After hearing the situation, the mustached old man questioned how this boy dared to strike the Grand Duke's daughter, but then Derek calmly pulled a document from his pocket. It was an official authorization from the Grand Duke of Plyn, granting him full freedom to use any teaching method. The old man quickly adjusted his monocle and began reading the document carefully. Even Diella started to feel uneasy about what was written there. The scene then shifts to later that night. Rian held his older brother back, since he was clearly furious. At that moment, he pushed open the door to Derek's room. Our protagonist was calmly reading a book. Valerian stormed in, angrily demanding how a mere mercenary dared to slap his little sister. "I did it because your father gave me permission." Rian grabbed his brother again and pointed out that it was Asselin who had brought this instructor in the first place. However, Valerian remained enraged and warned that if Derek crossed the line, he would face the consequences. Rian insisted that their sister Diella needed to be corrected to face reality, and even assured Derek that his older brother would no longer interfere. Still, Valerian told Rig to follow him and led him to his own room, where a doll was carefully kept. As he opened the door, he showed those dolls to Derek. He explained that the room didn't actually belong to him, but to his sister back when she lived in the main mansion. Among all the items, what caught Derek's attention the most was a painting. The eldest son explained that Diella used to enjoy painting, but she never completed her artwork. She would leave large sections blank and only color the parts she liked. At that moment, the older brother apologized for his earlier rudeness and admitted he understood Derek was acting for the best. "I know you care about your sister, but why bring me here?" With a saddened expression, he explained that Diella hadn't always been this cruel person. In truth, she had gradually changed over time. While picking up some books, the older brother said that Diella had once been a gentle and delicate girl, and he pleaded with Derek to save her, because otherwise she would be sent to a monastery. At that moment, Derek asked him to wait and pointed at some notes written inside the books, asking what they were. The older brother, who still hadn't introduced himself, explained that those books came from the disciplinary school Diella used to attend. Derek carefully examined the books and then looked closely at the paintings as well. At that moment, it seemed like everything finally clicked in his mind. Returning the book, he told the older brother that he would take proper care of Diella and help her recover. Meanwhile, the girl was peacefully asleep, looking almost innocent. And then Derek walked over and dumped a bucket of cold water on her, making her scream. Yep, zero hesitation. With a serious tone, he said it was time for her to wake up. Annoyed, Diella complained that it was still the middle of the night, but he immediately dragged her away as she hurled every insult she could think of. The maids did nothing while Diella shouted for help. He then took her outside the palace and threw her into the forest. Furious, she demanded to know if he had no fear of dying. While she kept yelling, he said she didn't understand the real reason behind his actions. With a cold expression, he revealed that he hadn't come to teach her, but to eliminate her. Now she was genuinely terrified and asked if he was serious. "Yes, I'm serious. In fact, I'm just a commoner who despises nobles." As he approached her, he declared that his goal was to wipe out arrogant nobles and drew his sword. She refused to believe him and insisted her father would come to save her, but he replied that he would finish her so quickly no one would even hear her scream. At that moment, real fear finally set in. "After I kill you, I'll disappear so fast no one will ever know I was here." At that moment, the blonde girl jumped up and started running. She knew that if he caught her, she would truly die. He had already scratched her cheek and she realized he wasn't bluffing. Since she knew the forest well from playing there as a child, she thought hiding would be easy. However, he was already using magic to chase her down and suddenly launched a fireball in her direction. "Yeah, bro, switch to lethal mode real quick. Is he seriously attacking me with magic?" That fireball was a 2-star spell. With a grin, he released the attack and the girl realized this might be her end. She threw herself to the ground and the fireball passed just above her before hitting a tree and causing a massive explosion. She was left in shock, completely shaken, while he laughed and remarked how unfortunate it was that he missed. Several minutes passed, and she kept running in pure desperation. Eventually, Diella tripped and fell to the ground. She felt like crying, but suddenly an arrow flew toward her, and she noticed it just in time to leap backward. Her reaction was so sharp that Derek approached and praised her, saying she had excellent reflexes. It was hard to believe that someone with her physical ability had been locked away in that annex all day. However, Diella doesn't stick around to listen to that nonsense and immediately bolts away. She figures that if she keeps up a fast enough pace, she might be able to shake him off, but when she glances back, she notices the boy already preparing another spell. Then, the moment he realizes it, the girl has completely vanished. Yes, this place is the very same forest she once painted. Without even noticing, she had been sensing the mana flowing through that forest. That alone proved she possessed an exceptional sensitivity to magic. Before he could even react, Diella suddenly appears above him, ready to smash a rock onto his head, but he swiftly draws his sword and slices the stone clean in half. She never expected a mage to handle a blade like that. He even praises her, saying that instead of fleeing, she chose to strike back, but now she has nowhere left to escape. Holding his blade firmly, he asks what her final words will be, yet instead of breaking down, she starts laughing. She declares that she would never beg for her life, and that only pathetic trash would stoop to something like that. He questions why she keeps talking about trash and wonders if she is obsessed with bloodlines. Struggling to hold back her tears, she says that is all she has left. If her lineage were taken away, there would be nothing remaining of her. That is because nobles only ever talk about magic, magic, and more magic. She begins to cry, admitting she has tried countless times to use magic, but has never succeeded. It seems Derek's earlier suspicion was completely correct. The girl was deeply frustrated, as all her siblings could wield magic except for her. Everything she attempted ended in total failure, so the only thing she could cling to was her noble bloodline. With a sorrowful expression, she repeats that without it, she would be nothing. But Derek remains cold and begins channeling energy into his sword. He asks if those truly are her last words and raises his blade. She looks at him, cheeks flushed and eyes filled with tears. And at that moment, he says goodbye and swings his sword. However, a chunk of ice suddenly shatters, and she stands there, bracing for death. As her tears fall, she realizes that ice has stopped the blade. Crystals of ice surround her, and without even intending to, she has cast a spell. He even thanks her, saying she has just accomplished something called magic. He sheathes his sword and apologizes for his harshness, explaining that it was necessary. Poor Diella is completely confused. He explains that what she did can't exactly be called proper magic, more like a raw manifestation of mana, but even so, she performed remarkably well. She tries to hold back her tears, but eventually breaks down crying. The truth is, Diella had been acting that way as a form of self-defense. After a while, he explains to her that she belongs to the so-called wild school, though she has no idea what that means. He clarifies that she had been studying disciplines that didn't align with her natural mana flow. That is why she was never able to absorb anything. The wild school follows a different, somewhat unconventional approach to learning. She asks how he knew she belonged to that school. He answers that it was thanks to her paintings. People assumed they were incomplete, but in reality they were already finished. She had been sensing the mana within things, which is why she only painted certain parts of the scenery. She realizes that Derek is describing exactly what she experienced, and after tending to her wound, he asks if she can stand. She says she can, but now that she has manifested mana, she understands she still has a long road ahead before she can use real magic. At that moment, she calls out to him and shyly thanks him, but as expected, he stays serious and simply tells her to keep moving. As they walk back, she asks if he liked her paintings, showing a surprisingly sweet and gentle side, completely different from how she acted earlier. The next morning, she wakes up early and immediately starts practicing magic. She can only produce a faint trace of cold mana in her hand, but even that is enough to excite her. After trying repeatedly, she notices it stops working again. At that moment, she opens her bedroom door, and the maid freezes in fear. Startled, the maid accidentally spills some water onto Diela's dress. "I'm so sorry, Miss Diela, please forgive me." Diela makes a slightly annoyed face, and since the maid is already traumatized from past punishments, she drops to her knees and begs for forgiveness. However, Diela simply tells her to be more careful next time. Wait, she's not going to hit her? Yeah, everyone in the room is confused now. The other maids rush over to help the new servant and ask what happened the previous night for Diela to change so drastically. Meanwhile, Derek is sleeping peacefully until he is awakened by someone knocking on his door, and when he opens it, she is standing there, full of energy, saying she wants to train magic. When she mentions that she managed to manifest mana, the mustached man instantly freezes up in shock. She explains that she woke up really early, and even managed to form a small amount of mana in her palm, but now it just refuses to work anymore. However, Derek slams the door right in her face and tells her to come back later because it's way too early. She pouts, clearly upset, though she tries her best to hide her frustration, but the girl can't hold it in and starts shouting, saying she wants to train as soon as possible. Derek, on the other hand, couldn't care less and goes right back to sleep. A little while later, the news begins spreading throughout the mansion. Everyone starts whispering that Lady Diela didn't break a single plate that morning, and on top of that, she had already manifested mana. Rian happens to pass by and overhears the gossip. Wait a second, his sister, she manifested mana? At that moment, they head over to their father, who is busy writing documents. Even the Grand Duke looks surprised, since Derek managed to make the girl manifest mana in just one day of training. Keeping a serious expression, he declares that this is wonderful news, but Rian steps in, saying they shouldn't jump to conclusions so quickly. Meanwhile, Valerian, the eldest son, gets irritated, saying that Ria is always doubting their sister. The father remains stern, while Rian insists that Diela has already caused plenty of trouble and they shouldn't just believe her so easily. Still, the Grand Duke stays serious, because he knows that Derek is no ordinary instructor. Later in Diela's room, she sits there sulking. Derek asks why she's in such a bad mood. She insists she's not sulking or upset, she's just angry. Cut it out. Being grumpy won't help you at all. She repeats that she's not sulking. Of course you are. You're even puffing your cheeks. Clearly annoyed, she snaps that she is not pouting. She says she's just mad because she wanted to start training earlier, but the boy just stares at her with a judging look. Yeah, that look says everything. Embarrassed, she finally admits that maybe she was sulking and pouting a little. At that moment, he pulls up a chair and explains that just because she manifested mana doesn't mean she can already use magic spells. Right now, the most important thing is learning how to control her own mana. She looks a bit discouraged and complains that it sounds extremely boring. The girl even says he's turned into a dull, boring teacher. Boring? Really? So you want me to act like I did last night? And she immediately recalls those moments. Ah, no, never mind. Just forget it. He tells her that today's lesson will focus more on practicing mana manifestation so she can gain perfect control over her energy. The Wild School doesn't rely on structured teaching, making it more suited for self-learning. In other words, her type of mana is ideal for developing through self-study. He even explains that the Wild School is great for learning independently and progressing little by little. Hearing that, she becomes curious and shyly asks if he's saying she has a lot of talent. Yes, you do have talent, but take it slow, because you won't be casting high-level magic anytime soon. She asks if that means she's a genius, but he replies that being a genius and being talented are completely different things. Meanwhile, Rig is outside, secretly spying on the training. He's clearly furious, and it becomes obvious that he's deeply jealous of his sister. The scene shifts to the next day, where she bursts into Derek's room, proudly showing that she can now manifest mana in her palm. The following day, she tells Rig that she feels a strange chill at the tips of her fingers. And the day after that, she runs around saying she feels something weird in her wrist as the mana flows through her arm. Then later, she chases after Derek, saying she can feel the mana moving through her feet. She even gets annoyed, saying she ordered him to stay near the annex so he'd always be around to answer her questions, but the boy casually replies that he's just reading a book and tells her to stop being a nuisance. Still, she grabs her instructor's hand and starts dragging him along, saying she's managing to channel even more mana now. She basically turned into a full-on magic nerd, not gonna lie. She was training literally all day, every day. Meanwhile, her older brother was watching everything unfold. He even calls Derek over so they can talk privately. The eldest son asks how his younger sister's training is going. Derek says that if she keeps progressing like this, she'll soon be able to use one-star magic. But then Valerian changes the subject, mentioning that their mother will be returning from a social gathering in a few days. And it would be good for Derek to know that their mother was not an easy person to deal with, as she placed great importance on noble bloodlines. Derek had already figured that out perfectly well. that basically meant their mother was extremely difficult to please, the kind of woman who would never be satisfied. At that moment, Derek turns serious and says that as the future head of the Duplin family, it means he must welcome certain family members with open arms. He had been training himself to become a very humble and understanding person. That's why he was treating Derek as well as possible. However, the protagonist admits he has no idea what this guy is trying to say. It honestly looked like he was struggling to get his point across, so he finally blurts it out, confessing that his greatest wish is to play with Yahello again, but his little sister no longer pays attention to him. Man, that's just sad. He explains that when his little sister was very young they used to play together all the time, but as she grew older she started ignoring him. The older brother even begins to cry, asking what he needs to do to win Yahello's affection again. Especially since she keeps following Derek everywhere, and he wants that kind of attention too. He even reveals that he learned how to make dolls as gifts for his little sister, showing a poorly made one. Yeah, do not give her that, bro. That thing looks cursed. Hearing those words, the boy struggles to hold back his tears. All he truly wanted was for his little sister to like him again, and so a few days pass until the lady of the Duplin family returns to the mansion. She feels pleased upon hearing that they found a suitable instructor for her beloved daughter. She introduces herself as Morella Duplin and even says she would like to send some gifts to his noble family. However, Derek replies that he does not belong to any noble house. The woman immediately asks if she heard him correctly, and he confirms. Yes, she heard it right, because he was just a commoner. Hearing that, the woman is completely stunned. The scene then shifts back to a few days earlier. Asselin steps out of the carriage and thanks Derek for everything he has done for her sister. She mentions that she has to leave the mansion and return to Elbstein, asking Derek to take good care of Yahello. The boy says she can leave it to him, and even Jaden comments that the boy will bring plenty of resources to the mercenary guild. Before departing, he wishes the boy good work, and they leave. At that moment, Aislinn suddenly realizes she forgot something. She forgot to mention that their mother would be returning in a few days. Jaden asks why that would even matter, and the girl explains that it's because their mother is not exactly easy to deal with. Back in the present, Morella is absolutely furious. She storms over to her husband and angrily demands to know what happened, questioning why he hired a commoner as Diella's teacher. The man asks if the trip somehow made her deaf, since she's shouting like that, and the woman keeps throwing a tantrum, insisting that her precious daughter cannot be taught by a commoner instructor. But according to the Grand Duke, they were unable to hire any private tutor, since no one wanted to teach that girl. All the well-born teachers had already given up, and the woman demands that her husband figure something out anyway. According to him, Derek was personally recommended by Asselin, and the mother gets even angrier, asking what her daughter was thinking bringing such a man into their home. She even suggests hiring her husband's brother Felipe, saying he could leave his post in the war and come train their youngest daughter. Hold on, you want my brother to abandon his military duties in the middle of a war just to come all the way out here and take care of our daughter? The woman continues her outburst, saying that even the high society of Elbstein would mock them. After all, in high society, a tutor is like a family's calling card, and the Duplin family would fall apart with an instructor like that. At that moment, the eldest son appears and asks his mother to calm down. After 6 chapters, the blonde boy finally gets his name revealed, and it is Valerian, and his mother tells him to simply leave her alone, but Rieg also steps forward, telling his mother that he has a proper solution. Everyone turns to Rieg, asking what exactly he is proposing. He knows very well that Derek does not have the proper lineage to train his younger sister. However, they still need to verify whether he has the right qualifications. So he suggests that if he defeats Derek in a magic duel, it would prove the boy is not good enough. However, his father states that Derek is a true mage. That clearly frustrates Rieg, as his father is basically implying that he would lose to Derek. So father, what do you think about me dueling Diella instead? Not even Valerian can believe that his brother is suggesting this. If Derek is truly such an excellent teacher, then Diella should be able to show great results in a magical duel against him. Hearing that, their father lets out a heavy sigh. Valerian immediately runs after his younger brother. What are you thinking? Challenging your little sister to a duel? What's wrong? You don't believe in her? You think Derek isn't a good enough teacher? Ried had said they couldn't forget what Diella had done, but Valerian insists he holds no grudge against his little sister. He doesn't hold a grudge just because she shares our blood. He even claims that this same blood might end up destroying their own family, and that everyone keeps ignoring it just because she's cute. So that's how you really feel, Rig? As he walks away, the boy coldly says she should be locked in the annex and left there to rot. Hearing that, Valerian realizes his brother is far more dangerous than he first thought. And at the beginning of the story, it really looked like the blonde guy was the villain. Plot twist hitting different. Later on, the girl goes to her instructor's room. He was studying and asks what she wants from him. At that moment, she throws a scroll onto his book and says that if she loses the magic duel, he will be dismissed. Derek reads it and says it will be very difficult for her to defeat Rig, since he is a 1-star mage. The girl insists that he's not understanding the situation. If she loses, he's the one who will lose his job, but according to the protagonist, he's a mercenary, so it doesn't really matter. He could just find another job, especially since the Duplin family had already paid him well enough. The girl becomes visibly sad, realizing she might not mean anything special to him. And just like that, a week passes. Finally, the day of the great duel arrives. The Grand Duke goes there personally to watch, and Derek even bows respectfully. Seeing the boy, the man asks why Derek seems so confident. He even questions whether it's reckless boldness or genuine confidence, since he appears to believe his student can win. At that moment, Rig steps onto the scene. According to him, this isn't just a simple magic duel. He intends to show his full power and crush Yahello. He plans to make her deeply regret everything from the past, and right then, our beloved blonde girl makes her entrance. I don't know about you, but she's quickly becoming a favorite. Going back in time, she was sitting there sadly, asking if he really didn't mind abandoning her. But according to Derek, she belongs to the wild school and could continue training without him, yet she starts crying, saying she needs his help to win. He tells her she has a lot of talent because she was born with the Duplin bloodline. And as he mentioned before, the wild school focuses on self-learning rather than direct teaching, but the girl breaks down in tears, saying she doesn't want to lose him no matter what. At that moment, he realizes she has already grown attached. With a sorrowful expression, she admits she knows she's not the best student, but she wants to keep learning magic with him no matter what. She doesn't want to learn alone or from anyone else. The boy grows thoughtful, and as he adjusts his glove, he says he doesn't know much about the etiquette rules of a magic duel. However, he knows very well how to win a fight since he's a mercenary. Since Lady Yahello had no mana in the beginning, she was treated as a failure and ignored by everyone. That caused her to build emotional walls and stop trusting others. He then asks if she's willing to do whatever it takes to win, and with tears in her eyes she says yes and asks for his help. And with that, she steps onto the battlefield. This was no longer the same Yahello he once knew. This was almost a mage and Derek's apprentice. Everyone was eager to witness the siblings' battle. The head administrator would act as the judge, and they would follow the duel rules of the Elbstein Hall. Whoever activates the protective magic circle first would lose. The protective magic circle of General Pelon is a magical item capable of shielding someone when they are about to receive a fatal blow. Nosoro even comments that nobles love spending money on these luxurious items. Without wasting time, Rig immediately begins chanting a spell. Yahello stays alert, especially since the magic he's using is quite powerful. He apologizes, but says he's about to send her straight to the annex, making sure she never returns to the mansion, and just like that he casts wind magic. Sharp blades of wind rush toward her, but the girl stays focused and manages to dodge by leaping to the right. He gets angry, asking how she dares to avoid his attack. Then he casts another similar spell. The blade curves mid-air, and when she looks back she realizes it could hit her directly. Derek notices that her brother is using one-star magic, and since she wouldn't be able to dodge, she blocks it with an ice shield. She formed that shield incredibly quickly. The boy gets furious, saying that wasn't even a ranked spell, just raw mana manifestation. Thinking the battle would be easy, he begins launching multiple wind spells. His goal was simple, completely crush his sister. Behind that wall of ice, she stands completely serious. A few days earlier, while they were preparing, he told her she wouldn't be able to fight like a noble, but would have to battle like a mercenary. Typical noble duels were full of honor and formalities, but for a mercenary, only victory truly mattered. She shouts, saying she understands that perfectly well. Back to the present, it's clear she's not here to play around. As the wind spells begin closing in, she starts leaping sideways, gradually dodging each incoming strike. Among mercenaries, there are those who win even against stronger opponents. Those people fight, they don't duel. The boy pulls his spell downward, slamming it into the ground while placing his hand against the terrain. She reminds herself to use the entire battlefield to her advantage. Just then, another spell comes straight for her head, but she manages to block it using raw mana manifestation. However, her ice isn't strong enough, though it's enough to make Rig visibly irritated. At that moment she realizes he has already cast another spell, coming from behind her, striking hard and causing a massive cloud of smoke. Derek remains calm, but Morella becomes frantic with worry for her daughter, and even starts shouting at the instructor, demanding the fight be stopped immediately. But Lord Duplin tells his wife to sit down, because the battle is not over yet. The woman throws a fit, insisting her daughter was directly hit. However, the father points out that General Pelon's protective circle hasn't activated yet. He wants to see how his daughter performs under pressure. He even glances at Derek, who remains completely composed. Duplin notices the boy hasn't even blinked, and asks if this was part of his plan. Rian begins searching for his sister within the smoke. He knows the magic circle hasn't triggered, meaning she wasn't struck directly. While he searches, it's revealed that she's hiding beneath the old wooden floorboards. At that moment, he hears a noise from below, and before he realizes it, ice spikes shoot upward. He manages to dodge by jumping backward, clearly irritated, accusing her of using a dirty trick. Attacking from beneath the platform doesn't mean she left the boundaries of the battlefield. The judge even confirms she hasn't broken any rules, so yes, she's allowed to use those dirty tactics. Right then he notices the wood cracking beneath his feet. He jumps back again to avoid getting hit, and with that Yahello starts striking multiple strategic points. Surprisingly, the older brother is now the one being pressured. For a moment it looks like he has no way out, but peeking through a gap, he spots the girl hiding underneath, and yeah, she is definitely not giving off friendly vibes. Yeah, she's in full boss fight mode now. He says he feels like he's seen those eyes before. Completely furious, he realizes those same eyes were on Derek's face when his older brother grabbed him by the collar. That could only mean one thing: she's learning extremely well from that young master. With anger rising, he clenches his fist and throws off his cloak. Now he's going to fight his younger sister seriously. Everyone watches anxiously, wondering who will come out on top. Morella even starts yelling for Rig not to go too hard on his little sister, but Duplin tells her to stay quiet, since no rules have been broken, though something else is catching his attention. Meanwhile, down below, the girl grows tense trying to figure out where her brother is, so she begins to focus intensely. When Diella concentrates deeply, she can actually see the flow of mana, and it seems Rig has started to realize that all of her attacks weren't based on sight alone, even when she struck from below with precision. That can only mean one thing: he needs to keep his distance from her. She notices that her brother's mana flow has suddenly disappeared and says that even if she can't sense it, she'll be able to hear his chant when he casts magic. The judge asks Rig what exactly he's planning, and then it's revealed that the boy has climbed up onto the family's banner. Since he's at a greater distance, he can prevent her from detecting his mana flow, but at the same time, he won't be able to properly chant complex spells, so he decides to use a simpler spell to try and break the old wooden flooring. He ends up snapping the flagpole, and the massive piece of wood crashes down onto the platform, causing widespread destruction. Morella grows extremely worried about her daughter, who is still down below. As the boy lands, he scans the area, searching for his sister, and soon notices her running toward the left side. He quickly prepares a spell, aiming to hit her directly, and the moment he releases it, the girl glances to the side. That was her perfect chance to block the attack. However, she fails and can't form an ice wall in time. Meanwhile, the projectile is speeding straight toward her. In desperation, Diella is forced to duck. She starts circling around her brother, and he becomes visibly confused. He wonders what exactly she is planning. Before he even has time to think, the girl suddenly lands a kick straight into his stomach. Yeah, he definitely did not see that coming. Falling to the ground, he complains that her move was dirty, but she immediately grabs a handful of sand and throws it into his face. The sand hits his eyes directly. That becomes her perfect opportunity to leap over the rubble. The boy assumes his sister has run out of mana, and is now acting out of desperation. To him, this fight would prove he is superior and deserves more of their father's attention. Because of that, he decides to face her with everything he has. Slowly, he begins stepping out from the debris. She holds her head due to the injury, and we see drops of blood falling onto the ground. Derek had once told her to think of magic as if she were painting with a brush. Mana would be the paint, and the spell would be the brush she uses. He even demonstrated it, gesturing in the air and drawing shapes with mana, telling her to imagine that as magic itself. When she understood that, the girl became completely fascinated. Now everything finally made sense to her. Back in the present, she closes her eyes to focus. She keeps repeating in her mind that mana is the paint, and the spell is the brush, and just like that, energy begins to flow through her hand. She can feel a vortex of mana circulating throughout her body. With a serious expression, she prepares to cast a real spell. Then she unleashes an ice spear. The judge is visibly shocked. Mirella even exclaims that her daughter is using a one-star spell. Rig becomes serious, realizing that attack could actually defeat him. At that moment, she prepares to deliver the final blow. But the boy doesn't fall behind, and also begins casting, forming multiple spears. He intends to strike her at several key points and secure the victory. The girl launches her attack, and he fires countless projectiles in response. Both spells collide, and upon impact, a massive explosion erupts. The mother panics, screaming Diella's name. At that moment, a magical circle from a necklace activates, protecting one of them. Rig is breathing heavily, and Diella is also completely exhausted. Right then, Derek realizes who the winner is. The scene shifts back to about a year earlier. The head administrator informs the Grand Duke that the Birmingham family has sent a letter. It was related to a certain incident. At that moment, he passes by his daughter's room. She looked deeply upset, while her father silently watched her. Back in the present, we see that little Diella has lost. Her necklace activated a magical barrier to shield her from the direct impact of those attacks. She still hadn't fully processed what happened, especially since no projectiles had struck Rig. Rig feels slightly disappointed, as he genuinely thought she might win, and when she realizes she will lose Derek as her instructor, the poor girl begins to cry. She cries so loudly that her sobs echo throughout the entire arena. Morella asks her husband why the girl is crying, and even says that a proper lady shouldn't fight using such dirty tricks. She continues blaming the girl's teacher, claiming she learned all of that from him. In a flashback, someone introduces himself as Raymond Oswald Duplin and says it is an honor to serve under his command, Your Majesty. While adjusting his armor, another man in a red cloak says he has heard many stories about his father, and the boy thanks him. Back in the present, he looks at his daughter, staring at her as he realizes she has truly changed. Meanwhile, the maids call out to the blonde girl. Still devastated, she ignores them as they ask whether her injuries hurt badly. One of the women tries to take her to the medical team, but she slaps the maid's hand away and walks toward her brother. The boy feels slightly awkward. He even says she did a great job as she greets him. Then she turns around and the maids insist that she needs to treat her injuries immediately. However, she was extremely upset, guys. She slowly walks toward her master. Derek tells her that she did very well, but the girl can't hold back her tears, and clutching her dress, she says she lost and even apologizes to Derek, saying she doesn't want to lose him. The boy grows serious and then stands up. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he tells her it's fine and that he doesn't care about his job. She should face this frustration and use it to become stronger. Even so, she was hurting deeply, since she had grown very attached to Derek. At that moment, a maid appears calling for her lady, and right behind her comes the girl's mother calling for Diella. Kneeling down, the woman says her daughter must be going through something very difficult. As she hugs her, she insists the girl needs to treat her injuries immediately. With her face all dirty, the girl says she's fine to reassure her mother, and so she ends up leaving with the maids. Morella wipes away her tears and notices Derek walking away. However, she quickly follows after him. She calls out to him and he turns around. At that moment, she begins yelling, asking what he thought he was doing teaching such cheap tricks, and even slaps him across the face. She continues, saying those techniques would only disgrace her daughter, who is a refined noble, and then slaps him again. Shouting loudly, she calls him trash and says they don't belong to the same world, and that he will never see her daughter again. While that unbearable woman humiliates the protagonist, her husband approaches and suddenly slaps her across the face. He even says she doesn't know what she's talking about. The woman is outraged, insisting they cannot accept a commoner as their daughter's instructor. Yes, he is a commoner, but he is our daughter's teacher. What kind of parents treat their child's teacher like this? He apologizes to Derek on behalf of his wife, and our hero, with his cheeks still red, says nothing. Duplan tells the boy to follow him, as he has something to discuss in private, and just like that they leave, leaving that difficult woman behind. Still, she finds the whole situation absurd. Meanwhile, the girl's father prepares to write a document and says he will reward Derek, even granting him the highest rank allowed for a commoner. At that moment, he asks the boy if he would like to learn a 3-star spell. That immediately raises some suspicion. He knows the Grand Duke, a 5-star mage, is extremely intelligent. Even so, this is an opportunity he simply cannot pass up. So he says yes, he would like to learn a 3-star spell. The man explains he is only offering this because the boy taught magic to his daughter, even believing he would be dismissed. Derek says that from now on, Lady Yahello could very well continue learning on her own, since she belongs to the Wild School. But Duplan replies that his daughter doesn't need just an instructor, she needs a master. Since the boy has ambitions, he doesn't even have the luxury of dreaming freely, because he is a commoner, and knows nobles would feel offended if someone like him mastered high-level magic. As the boy aims to become a 5-star mage and not stop at 3, he understands he will face many challenges ahead. For that reason, he cannot remain in this mansion for too long, and the man even asks if Derek is ready to leave. The boy replies that yes, he is ready to depart immediately, but her father says he still needs him to continue teaching his daughter for a while longer. That's why he is offering a 3-star spell in exchange. And so Derek agrees. He leaves the Grand Duke's room and heads straight to the library. Once there, he gains access to countless books containing 3-star spells. He starts reading through them, but something catches his attention. Many people spend years trying to learn even 1-star magic, and now he has the chance to study countless grimoires. As he reads, he even comments that his blonde mercenary friend would definitely be jealous of him. And we see that the girl Apolline suddenly feels her ear burning, as if someone is talking about her. A few days pass, and little Yahello has fully recovered. The girl is happy, as she has become a 1-star mage. She approaches him and asks if he isn't happy about her achievement. And the guy responds that it's not really that big of a deal. Savage teacher energy. Scratching her head, the girl says it's really hard to please her master. He even reminds her that she was crying earlier, afraid he would be fired, and in the end he wasn't dismissed at all. Feeling embarrassed, the girl insists she wasn't crying at all. Pouting slightly, Yahello says her father should have told her earlier that he wouldn't dismiss her master. Anyway, he says they should move on and begin the next lesson right away. The girl immediately lights up with excitement, asking what she's going to learn now. Since she had only recently awakened her mana and already reached 1-star spells, it meant she had a lot of talent. And the most interesting part, guys, is that she could cast spells without even needing to chant. The girl gets even more excited and asks if that means she's talented. Derek says they'll restart training tomorrow and focus again on mana manifestation, but she insists she wants to keep training 1-star spells. According to him, mastering the basics is what matters most. She gets a bit disappointed, saying she thought she would only be practicing 1-star spells from now on. Looking adorable, she asks when she'll learn new spells, giving him a pleading expression. Derek stares at her seriously and Yahello asks why he's looking at her like that. According to him, he's surprised because now she actually listens to what he says. Blushing, she says she has always respected what he told her. But the boy replies that's not exactly true, since when he first arrived at the mansion she threw dirty water on him. And it wasn't just once, guys, it happened twice. He just calls out, "Derek." Turning away shyly, she asks if he still remembers that and quickly tries to change the subject, saying she's really excited to train mana manifestation. He smiles, thinking she has grown into a well-mannered and kind young lady. The scene shifts to the next night. The blonde girl is exhausted from training, and he says it looks like she'll be busy soon, as she stands up. The girl asks if he heard as well, because starting next week she will begin etiquette lessons. She even says it's easier to learn 1-star magic than to behave like a proper lady. Basic etiquette, noble conduct, foreign languages, geography, history, botany, piano lessons, all of that seemed way too difficult for her, but Derek says she needs to learn all of it, because she is the flower of the Duplan family. However, according to the girl, what she really wants is to learn magic. He tells Yahello that he has gained an even higher position within the mansion, and she becomes happy that her father values him. And unlike her father, the girl's mother absolutely hated him. He even thinks Morella will do everything she can to have him dismissed, and the girl says she'll find a way to prevent that. She knows it's because of the duel, since the protagonist taught her those dirty tricks. And when she mentions that, Derek suddenly comes up with a brilliant idea. They just need to prove Morella wrong by showing that Diella is a gentle and refined young lady. She's surprised, realizing that actually makes a lot of sense. And so a few days pass. Morella walks toward her daughter. She is worried, as she sees the protagonist as some kind of dangerous mercenary. In her mind, he has been teaching her daughter all the wrong things. Her greatest fear is that her daughter might become a mercenary just like him. Scratching her head, she says she can't stop thinking about it for even a second. Her intention is to talk to her daughter and convince her to stop training with that new master. But when she opens the door, she hears her daughter's soft and gentle voice. That voice is so delicate and sweet, it's almost like a blooming rose. This makes Morella's eyes fill with tears, but then she realizes that really is her daughter. Diella is now gentle, elegant, and very polite, completely different from before. Wait a second, is this really my youngest daughter? So well behaved? She explains she couldn't leave her room in the past few days because she had to recover from her injuries. But now she finally has the chance to talk to her mother. She also reveals that she has started piano lessons, leaving her mother shocked. The girl has changed so much that she almost seems to shine like gold. Wait, Diella, your etiquette classes haven't even started yet. Why are you already acting so refined? She says it's thanks to the instructor her sister Asselin brought for her. So she learned all of this from that teacher? Then she politely says goodbye to her mother, explaining she has piano lessons. As she walks past a maid, the maid clumsily drops something on the floor. At that moment, Diella gently asks if the maid got hurt, and even tells her not to overwork herself, making the woman tremble in fear. Everyone is shocked because the blonde girl has changed drastically in such a short time. The scene shifts to the noble district of Elbstein. Some wealthy young ladies are gathered for a tea party, gossiping about other noble families. Asselin, being very kind, looks surprised at all the gossip the girls are sharing. They mention that in a few months, a very important event will take place at the Rosetta Hall. That red-haired girl belonged to the Birmingham family, and her name was Helene. Asselin thanks her friend Helene for her concern, since everyone knew the Duplin family had been struggling to find a tutor for her youngest sister. Meanwhile, Helene asks if Asselin really went out searching for a teacher for her little sister, and even wonders if the guy might be some legendary master. The second daughter of the Veltus family, named Denise, asks Asselin if she truly managed to find a good teacher. That news starts spreading throughout the entire mansion. Beaming with pride, Asselin proudly says her little sister can now use one-star magic, and on top of that, she has become calm and gentle. Denise starts thinking that the Duplin family must have been hiding Diella all this time and only now managed to fix her. Asselin then mentions that the teacher she found for her sister isn't a noble, and even says he's a mercenary, making her two friends question his character. It's strange that they would hire a commoner, but thinking about it, even my head chef quit working for the Duplin family because of that ill-mannered girl. She even remembers the man getting emotional while saying that Lady Helene was very kind. So that must mean it was truly difficult to find a teacher for such a troublesome girl. Sipping her tea, she smiles and asks Lady Asselin what the name of her sister's teacher is. She wants to know more about him, since he must be someone quite remarkable. Asselin says that the boy's name is Derek, and keep that name in mind because it's going to matter later. The next day, while talking with her mother, she keeps repeating everything Derek had taught her. But her mother insists that it wasn't Derek who taught her, but that she learned it all on her own. She firmly denies that, saying she didn't learn anything by herself. It was Derek who taught her in such a respectful way, and she even lets out a cute little laugh, saying she really likes her master. Her mother gets annoyed but tries to hide it. And when she leaves, she's furious, saying that girl won't stop mentioning Derek's name. At this point, she doesn't even know what to do to change her daughter's way of thinking. When she asks the household staff, all of them only have positive things to say about Diella. Everyone says she has completely changed over the past few weeks. The head administrator even states that Lady Diella is becoming a very sweet and gentle girl. And it feels strange because Morella is filled with anger, since all of this is thanks to that commoner teacher they hired. Meanwhile, our protagonist is training, reading that grimoire while completely drenched in sweat. He's trying to control the mana within his body to perform a 3-star spell, but it's proving extremely difficult, and he even collapses to the ground. Covered in sweat, he suddenly hears someone calling his name. When he turns around, it's Rig, apologizing for interrupting his training. Derek says it's no problem, and then asks what brought him there. Rig says he came to talk about Diella, but before that, he asks what that 3-star book Derek is holding is. Derek explains that it was lent to him by Rig's own father, which leaves Rig completely surprised, but he admits that a 3-star spell is still above his current level. Even so, he remembers Duplin's words about aiming to become stronger, but for our protagonist to become a 5-star mage, he'll have to grind like crazy. No shortcuts here. Rig is still shocked that his own father lent him such a book. Our hero cuts the topic short and asks what Rig actually came to talk about. The guy starts stuttering, saying it's a bit complicated, but he wants to know what kind of things his little sister likes. Oh no, not this again. With slightly flushed cheeks, he asks if she would like it if he made her a doll. And remembering the older brother's doll, our protagonist immediately says absolutely not. Diella would not like it at all. I figured she wouldn't like it. So then, what kind of gift would she like? The boy stands up awkwardly, and the two of them start walking back to the mansion together. Rian thanks Derek for helping his little sister. He even says the atmosphere in the mansion has become more peaceful, and he started getting along better with his brother Valerian. The guy continues, saying that their father is very grateful to Derek, even if he doesn't show it easily. It seems that bringing Derek into the mansion has helped everyone, even Rig himself. He goes on with quite the speech, but deep down it's clear he was jealous of his sister because their father gave her so much attention, and for what feels like the 20th time, he thanks Derek, saying he brought a sense of calm to the mansion. Our protagonist meanwhile clearly has no idea how to deal with this level of praise. Changing the subject, Rian comments that Diella's magic looked more like a painting. And of course that catches Derek off guard, since the guy managed to notice that in such a short fight, so he ends up praising Rieg, saying that's exactly right, even adding that Lady Diella uses the Wild School's mana manipulation method. Each person controls mana in their own unique way, and Diella's style resembles painting strokes. He even admits that if he kept acting as her teacher, he might actually hold her back. As they part ways, Rieg says he fully understands his sister's potential. And just like that, 2 months pass by. The girl receives some flowers and wonders why she was given that kind of gift. She picks one up and smells it, while her maid suggests placing it in her hair. She had already grown used to using first-star spells and had even gotten closer to her servants. All of these changes over the past months were thanks to her master's guidance. The maid asks why she seems so happy today, and with an even brighter smile she carefully arranges the flowers in her hair. However, when she reaches Derek's room, she accidentally drops the flower onto the floor. Her expression falls, and she starts asking what he just said. It was exactly what she heard. He could no longer continue teaching her. Just like the seasons change, no winter lasts forever. Hours earlier he had spoken with her father, explaining that Lady Diella belonged to the Wild School. That meant she would grow more by studying on her own rather than relying on a teacher. Duplin agrees, saying there is no longer a need for the boy to remain in the mansion. He says it seriously, even standing up, admitting that thanks to Derek many things have changed, and now his daughter can finally grow as a noble. He had been so focused on ruling his territory that he never had the chance to be a proper father. Then he asks when Derek plans to leave. He heard that Asselin will soon travel to Elbstein, so Derek plans to leave alongside the Lord's daughter as soon as possible. Derek also says he came to return the magic books and the library key, but Duplin tells him to return only the key. What? Is he really letting me keep this book? If you have nothing else to say, you may leave. The boy takes a deep breath and thanks the Grand Duke. There was not much time left before his departure. At that moment he runs into Diella, and she says she is sorry that they have to say goodbye. Unlike earlier, she is no longer crying. The girl says he probably will not listen to what she has to say, but she will say it anyway. With an innocent expression, she says she wishes she could keep training with him forever. Our boy feels a bit guilty for leaving her, but this is for her own good. He steps closer, kneels down, and says he hopes she keeps studying so she can become an incredibly powerful mage. She struggles hard not to cry. He says they will probably meet again someday, and until then she should become even stronger. And maybe next time he will be able to teach her a brand new spell. With her head lowered, she says it is annoying how he always knows exactly what to say, leaving her with no way to argue back. Later that night, the girl is sleeping peacefully, but suddenly she begins to have a nightmare where everyone calls her useless. They all say she is a disgrace to the Plan family because she could not use magic. At that moment, she wakes up in shock. She even lets out a loud scream. Her heart is pounding rapidly. Holding her head, she wonders what kind of terrible nightmare that was. Her maid appears, asking if Lady Diella is alright. The girl is covered in cold sweat, and at that moment she thinks of a strategy to make Derek stay in the mansion. Maybe if she went back to mistreating her servants, he would stay to continue training her. Yeah, desperate times, questionable plans. She believes that might actually work. The maid, clearly scared, asks if Diella is feeling okay, but she puts on a serious expression and calmly says everything is fine, leaving the maid surprised. With a gentle smile, she tells her maid not to worry, saying it was just a minor nightmare. She feels determined to never act like her old self again. Now, she is a completely different person. Early the next morning, our protagonist is about to leave the mansion. Asselin welcomes him to continue their journey to the capital. The boy looks back and sees all the family members gathered there to say goodbye. Valerian says it was a pleasure having Derek in their home during those months, and adds that if Derek ever needs anything, he can count on them. Our protagonist felt a bit down, yet he still expressed his gratitude. At that moment, he looked at the girl, who seemed more resolute than ever. She even asked why he was staring at her like that. Do you really think I'm going to beg you not to go? If that's what you thought, you got it wrong. I'm not a child anymore. With a gentle smile, he said it had been an honor to have her as his student, though he didn't feel worthy of being called a teacher. Putting on a cheeky little grin, she said she would brag to everyone, claiming she once had an amazing teacher named Derek. He was feeling sad, and so was she, guys, but she turned away, saying she wouldn't cry. When he told her not to push herself too hard, she shot back, saying she was an adult now and could take care of herself. That made him remember how he used to act in the past. Back when he said goodbye to Katia, his former master, he had said the exact same thing, that he was an adult and could handle himself. But his master pulled him into a tight embrace and told him to keep her words close to his heart. Back in the present, he takes a deep breath and calls out to Lady Diella. Placing his hand gently on the girl's head, he tells her she doesn't have to grow up so fast. That makes her eyes well up, and she just can't hold it in anymore, guys. The little girl starts crying, calling out to Derek, and while waving her hand, she says she'll see him again soon. And just like that, they say their goodbyes. He tells Lady Diella that he hopes to meet her again in Elbstein, and then he leaves. the scene shifts to the commercial district of Elbstein. After arriving at the mercenary guild, his friend was already there, beating up some guy. Several mercenaries were cheering her on. And yeah, that blonde right there is insanely strong, guys. But the moment she sees Derek, she lights up with excitement. Our hero had finally returned. The scene changes to the next day at the tavern. Jaden gets all curious, asking what kind of things he learned while staying with the nobles. His friend points out that Derek even looks pale. Apparently that's what happens when you live like a noble. She goes on, saying it must have been a nightmare dealing with those disgusting people and that he probably lost his mind. But the big guy, completely serious, says it was actually not that bad. Making a disgusted face, she claims he's starting to sound like a noble himself. Relax, Pauline, have a drink and calm down. After all, Derek had brought a lot of money back to the guild. Rummaging through his bag, he says he obtained something that money couldn't even buy and places down a 2-star grimoire. Pauline immediately freezes in shock, asking if he stole it. They all thought it was just a 2-star grimoire, but Derek reveals it's actually a 3-star one. Yeah, casual flex. The book starts glowing even more intensely, and Pauline asks if she could also go steal a grimoire like that. No, I didn't steal it. The Grand Duke Plan gave it to me. Quit lying, kid. Just tell me where you stole it so I can go grab one too. Later, after the tavern had already closed, he talks a bit about what it was like spending those months in the mansion. He even admits that his combat skills feel a bit rusty. Jaden tells him to relax, saying there are plenty of missions available that could double his training. Alright, in that case, I want to start tomorrow. The next day, he wakes up early to head out on a mission. Penny was with him. Honestly, it felt like the girl caused more trouble than she helped. After a few hours, they managed to defeat the orcs. They completed several missions together, like taking down giant spiders and even transporting goods. In the middle of the night, he would always go out to train. Since he felt he still wasn't strong enough to cast 2-star spells with ease, he begins forming a spell in the palm of his hand. However, Derek couldn't control that type of magic yet, and it ends up exploding. The blast was pretty intense, and the boy falls to the ground with his hand injured. He had already mastered 2-star magic quite well, but moving up to 3-star spells was unbelievably difficult. The scene returns to the tavern, and several months had passed until a full year was finally completed. It was freezing cold, and Pauline complains that it's even snowing outside. Jaden asks why Derek insists on taking missions even in that freezing weather, but he comes back carrying a sack full of valuable items. He was wiping blood off his face when Jaden crouches down and says he has the perfect mission for Derek. Not only was it easy, but it also paid really well. And so he heads off to the mansion of Count Birmingham. They were looking for a commoner to participate in a magical duel. Basically, our boy was about to be a human punching bag. Not exactly a dream job. And he arrives at the district. Inside, an old man was talking to a red-haired woman. She was curious about who her opponent would be today. And we quickly realize that's Helene, that friend of Eileen. When she hears she'll be fighting a commoner, she immediately gets annoyed, saying the person is probably weak. However, the bald old man assures her that they specifically hired a very powerful mercenary. That way she ends up agreeing and even says she's going to turn him into her personal punching bag. Oh man, someone's a little too confident right now. The old man mentions that the boy they hired is capable of using 2-star magic. Meanwhile, he was getting ready, and at that moment the girl approached him. She asked if he was the one who would be fighting her. The boy confirmed and introduced himself, saying his name was Derek. She also introduced herself as Helene, and upon hearing that name, Derek felt like he had heard it somewhere before. The bald man says it's time for them to head to the arena. Once they arrive, the girl begins to warm up. With her arms crossed, she asks if he understands the basic etiquette of duels. He replies that he knows the basics, and according to Helene that was already enough, even saying he could fight her using his full strength. She would need to push herself to the limit as well, since the battle at the Rosetta Hall was approaching. The big guy asks first if she really wants him to go all out. Yes, of course I do. Why are you even asking me that? Well, first I need to understand your level of endurance, so I can be of some help to you. When the old man hears that, he starts shaking his head, as it sounded offensive, almost as if he were placing himself above the girl. She even lets out a laugh. With a mocking tone, Helene tells him to fight with everything he has. He gives a slight smirk and with a serious expression, says that's fine and that he'll go all out. With that, both of them begin preparing their spells. She chants her incantation while wondering just how strong he really is. I need to show this boy the gap that exists between nobles and commoners. She fires off a spell, but our protagonist was fully alert, and without much effort, dodges it, causing the attack to hit a tree and split it in half. The girl was very powerful, but he proved to be far faster. In a serious tone, he asks what her next move will be. Not gonna lie, that sounded like a taunt. This can't be, is this kid mocking me? She begins preparing a much stronger spell. Several blades rise from the ground as she sets up those projectiles to strike the boy. With her hand extended, she declares that the fight ends here, but our guy simply tosses out a small piece of ice. That catches her off guard, as all of her attacks are instantly disrupted, and he lets that ice fragment drop right near her foot. No way, he controlled that ice shard as if it were nothing. Even the bald man starts thinking that boy is ridiculously strong, so she decides to get serious and switches to using her fire element. Multiple flaming arrows begin forming around her, and Derek notices that Helene has changed her strategy. With a focused expression, she keeps summoning more. She had created an absurd number of fire arrows and unleashes them like a rainstorm toward him. Well, there's no way I can dodge all of that. Since dodging wasn't an option, he creates a wind barrier, and it works surprisingly well. Then he adds the water element, triggering a burst of thick smoke. The smoke becomes so dense that he can't see anything at all. At that moment, he realizes she's closing in on him. The girl leaps toward him with an ice arrow in hand. He even comments that she's skilled at adapting mid-fight, and with a snap of his fingers, he says her talent is truly insane. Right then, a flash of light explodes across the area. The girl can't see anything, and in desperation she tries to find a place to take cover. What kind of magic is this? I can't see anything. Think Helene, I can't let my guard down. At that moment, that same ice fragment passes right by her face. What was that sound I just heard? Little by little, she manages to see Derek at a distance. He was firing those ice fragments one after another. Just as one was about to hit her, she manages to dodge it. It only ends up cutting her hair. That spell of Derek's, aside from being fast and powerful, was also extremely silent. She realizes he had been missing on purpose, and could have hit her from the very beginning if he wanted. Looking straight at him, she asks how he dares to underestimate her. She even prepares herself, waiting for him to launch the next 2 projectiles. She believed she was strong enough to block them. However, she had fallen right into his trap. Derek had already created distance between them. Even so, she says she had set up a trap for him as well, giving a confident smile. After all, she had noticed that whenever he brought his hands together, that was the exact moment he cast his spell, so all she needed to do was cast hers before he did. But the boy stomps the ground hard, startling her so much that she jumps back, and in that instant she's completely shocked because he was using the lightning element. A wave of electricity bursts out from his feet. Extending her hand, she tries to block the attack but ends up being slammed to the ground. The old man realizes that the boy is far more powerful than Helene. Holding her head, the red-haired girl admits she didn't expect that outcome. She even fixes her hair, saying the fight was quite interesting. I'll be honest, Derek, I underestimated you at the start. As she bows, she says he proved himself to be a fascinating mage and even thanks him for the match. At that exact moment, she uses the same technique, sending lightning from her feet, thinking she could catch him off guard. However, the big guy calmly grabs all that electric energy with his bare hands. It didn't even faze him, not even a little, and then he redirects all that lightning back toward her while leaping forward. And the moment she meets that cold gaze, she starts screaming in fear. Yeah, instant regret unlocked. At that point, the old man rings the bell. That meant she had lost the match. He immediately cancels his spell and then bows, saying she must already be exhausted. At that moment, she's completely confused, wondering where he got such overwhelming skill. Later on, her maid is brushing her hair. She admits that he's incredibly talented, and he responds by saying he's glad to hear her praise. He also compliments her, saying she has sharp perception. With a smile, she says he must have learned those compliments from nobles. She had heard that he was a commoner, yet he had always been around nobles. He explains that he does whatever it takes to survive, because he's a mercenary. She mentions that fighting him was truly enjoyable, but warns him to be careful, since that old man in the back has a bad temper. Our hero already knew that nobles didn't look kindly on commoners. While sipping her tea, she says she really enjoyed today's training and hopes to fight him again, especially since the Rosetta Hall tournament is approaching. He tells her that with her current level she has nothing to worry about, since she's already quite strong. However, there was one rival she feared, and that was Eileen Eleanor Duplin. That girl was far more powerful than her. Our hero knew exactly who Helene was referring to. At that moment, the redhead says he can leave, and he starts heading out. She keeps trying to remember where she had heard the name Derek before, and as she drinks her tea, it suddenly clicks. It was Aislinn who had mentioned hiring an instructor named Derek to train her younger sister. The moment she remembers, she's completely shocked and immediately calls out to our hero. Right after that, she grabs his arm. Derek makes a confused face, like, what does this crazy girl want? What is it? So it really is you, isn't it? Your deal is instructor, right? The scene shifts to a bit later, and he's already inside the mansion. She says she'll get straight to the point and reveals that she desperately wants to defeat Aislinn, and for that she's willing to do anything. You're going to fight Aislinn at the Rosetta Hall? She confirms that yes, that's exactly the plan. However, neither of them had reached the level of 2-star magic yet. If she could at least reach that level, she would gain a huge advantage. But our hero says that might be impossible. Even so, he admired her ambition. Helene says you can call it ambition or whatever you like, but she had become obsessed. And when she admits she's even willing to use dirty tricks, his expression turns serious real quick. In truth, she felt deep envy and jealousy, and that had made her feel disgusted with herself. All the effort she had put in until now still wasn't enough to surpass Aislinn. Lady Helene, why are you telling me all of this? The girl was trembling as she set her teacup down on the table. She says she's revealing her own weakness, so he understands that she's serious. She even says she wants to ask something, and he tells her to go ahead. Since you worked at the Plan household, I want to know Aislinn's true level, and whether I stand any chance of defeating her. That was why she had exposed all her weaknesses to our hero. She at least wanted to defeat Aislinn, who had always been one step ahead of her, and even asks him what she should do. He admits that Aislinn has reached an extraordinary level, and that Lady Helene also possesses unmatched talent. But even so, if she wants to defeat Aislinn, she would need to train relentlessly. Sometimes, a person simply carries an emptiness in their heart, and the girl sitting before him wasn't looking for empty praise. He could see in her a burning and desperate desire to be recognized. The atmosphere grows tense, and the boy still hasn't said anything further. Then he finally admits that she has no chance of defeating Lady Aislinn. That wasn't shocking, since the redhead had already expected that answer, and he continues staring at her. So she says that since winning is so difficult, she wants to find a way to make it possible. Derek asks what exactly she means by that. As she stands up, she says that Derek turned the rebellious Yahello into a mage, so he must be an excellent instructor. In that case, she says she truly wants his help. He tells her it's not impossible, but she'll have to train extremely hard. Crossing her legs, she says she'll push herself to the absolute limit, and even asks if there's anything about her that bothers him. He says yes, and explains that first she needs to understand the methods he used with Lady Yahello. Those methods were quite harsh. The redhead says she doesn't know the details, but he doesn't need to worry, because she's tougher than she looks. Second, she should be aware that he is a mercenary. Yes, I know you're a mercenary. I don't care about rumors. What matters to me is winning. I don't care if people talk badly about me because of that. I'm telling you, Derek, the thing I want most is victory. I don't care what others say about me. She wanted to become powerful and rise to the top among the noble families of Elbstein, and if she failed to achieve that, then her life would feel meaningless. Full of determination, she tells him never to underestimate the fire burning within her, but the boy says she misunderstood him. He explains that since he's a mercenary, that means he would charge a high price to train her. At that moment, she becomes a bit embarrassed, realizing she had misunderstood everything, and instantly her cheeks start to turn red. Shyly, she says money isn't an issue, since she can easily pay. He even comments that the room suddenly feels a bit warmer for some reason. Smooth recovery, not gonna lie. The next day at the Grand Rosetta Hall, the girls were walking through the area. Aslan says she's very excited for the battle that will take place in the coming weeks, and we can clearly see that Helene is full of envy, guys. She even calls out to Aslan and says she's very humble. Aslan is surprised since Helene was also there, so they approach each other, and Aslan says she was just talking about Helene, mentioning that she's looking forward to their match. Meanwhile, the other girls whisper among themselves, saying the redhead doesn't stand a chance of winning. Helene says Aslan doesn't even need to train, since she has never lost before. The girl thanks her for the compliment, but says she can't let her guard down, because she knows her friend has been training and is very strong. At that moment, Helene mentions that she hired a new master to become stronger, and the girl asks, who is this new master? She replies that it's someone Aslan herself has already tested, and even reveals that it's Derek, the one who trained Aslan's own sister. At that moment, the black-haired girl is left slightly shocked. Helene said that on purpose to provoke her friend, trying to shake her composure. However, the girl reacts with surprise and immediately starts praising her friend, saying she did well because Derek is an excellent instructor. She genuinely looks happy and says she truly hopes her friend can learn important things. Helene thanks her, not expecting her friend to react that way at all. That's exactly what irritated her, because Aslan was always so kind and gentle. At that moment, Aslan remembers that she had even told her little sister she could hire Derek again to teach her, but the girl refused. She didn't want to come across as someone dependent. What she really wanted was to train on her own. It was as if the blonde wanted to impress him the next time they met. Because of that, Aslan starts wondering if it's worth going to talk to Derek. Aslan, if you think about it, you'll definitely understand what it means for me to have taken him from you. Hallen keeps thinking to herself. She was having full villain thoughts, while her friend beside her was thinking about something completely different. She even says Derek's name and was about to ask something about him, but Hallen interrupts her. As she says goodbye, she mentions she enjoyed the conversation and hopes they'll have a good fight. In Hallen's mind, the girl standing there was filled with jealousy because she had managed to steal the instructor. But what Hallen actually wanted to say was that his training was extremely intense, and she should prepare herself mentally. From afar, Denise watches the two and thinks the girls are building quite an interesting rivalry. The scene shifts to the mercenary team's tavern. Our protagonist explains that he'll spend a few days training that girl so she can win at Rosetta Hall. The good part is that the training will happen in the same city, so he won't need to stay at any noble's house. Jaden asks if he really thinks Lady Helene can defeat Lady Aslan. In a serious tone, the boy says it's not a dead end. As long as Lady Helene manages to break through the 2-star barrier, she will most likely win. But the mercenary leader says that sounds a bit unrealistic and even tells the boy to wake up and face reality, but he replies that his plan will actually require the boss's help. Jaden immediately asks what exactly he would need him for. And it wasn't just Jaden, he would also need Pauline. Alright kid, just spit it out already. You're not planning anything reckless, are you? To be honest, Derek admits that the plan is in fact extremely dangerous. The other blonde standing nearby asks what she's needed for. They barely notice she was there getting drunk, but she suddenly shouts that if money is involved, she's in. Priority set, no hesitation. The scene shifts to a little later. He tells Helene that they will begin with live combat training. She would need to repeat certain movements, and the training would consist of 10 battles. She wasn't very convinced, but he says it's necessary so he can properly assess her combat level. The girl gets excited and says she's very used to physical fights, so this would be easy for her. Alright then, let's begin now, the boy says, already releasing magic from his hand. A few minutes later, the arena is already heavily damaged. She struggles to catch her breath, as the fight had been intense. He praises his student, saying she performed very well. He gives her only 10 minutes to rest before starting the second round. But she complains that she has no mana left. Yeah, she really thought this was going to be easy. He tells her she can rest for 10 minutes, and that should be enough. After the break, she manages to cast a few spells. He tells her she needs to push herself to extract even the very last drop of mana. and so they continue training until sunset. After several battles, she collapses on the ground, completely exhausted. He says the session is over and that she can go home and have dinner. Derek even asks if she's okay, since his training is extremely intense. She quickly stands up and says the training isn't that hard and that she's already used to tough routines. She had endured a lot just to survive in high society. I see. Looks like I underestimated you. As she gets up, she says she's just a little tired and that after eating and resting, she'll be fully recovered by tomorrow. With a smile, she says that tomorrow, after resting, she'll show him just how strong her body really is. Tomorrow? Didn't I say the training isn't over yet? That immediately catches her off guard. According to Derek, that was only a short break, and after dinner she would have to return to training. Yeah, this isn't training. It's a survival event. He even says he didn't take this job just to play around. Early the next day, he shouts loudly, telling her she can do it. It was extremely difficult, but he was trying to squeeze out every last drop of her mana. She had already fired more than 10 magical arrows in a row and starts complaining that she can't do any more. Now that she was completely out of mana, he makes her run around the mansion. Later, they finally stop to rest, and the girl is completely drained. He asks if she's alright, and she says yes, that the training was actually very fun. Well, Helene, if you want to quit, you can just quit. Who said I was going to quit? I'm not giving up, she insists. The boy realizes that this redhead's desire to win is incredibly strong. He stands up and says that since she has rested enough, it's time for another duel. And just like that, 2 weeks pass. She was exhausted, and the Rosetta Hall battle was finally approaching. Her friend Denise asks why she looks so tired. She says it's because of the training with that mercenary. While reading a book, Denise asks why she's pushing herself so hard. However, she notices that the redhead had fallen asleep, and when she wakes up, she says that she's working so hard because she wants to win. That surprises Denise, who says she will support her friend no matter what. At that moment, she notices the other girls approaching and quickly warns Helene not to get caught sleeping, and the girl instantly jumps up. Ellen ends up spotting the two girls at the table, and the redhead pretends she wasn't sleeping at all. Ellen's friends mention that a shop just opened at the end of the street, and when they leave, the redhead is left there, completely nervous. She even asks Denise if her friends have already left the street. Worried, she asks if Ellen saw her sleeping on the table, and Denise says it doesn't seem like she did. However, we can tell that Ellen did notice Helene sleeping, probably because she was exhausted from training. She even shows a concerned expression, saying her friend looks very worn out. The scene shifts to a bit later. After arriving home, Helene was completely worn out, and they mentioned that several boxes had been delivered for her. Those were gifts from the Plan family, more specifically from Ellen. The maid explained that they were high-quality mana potions along with recovery elixirs. Realizing that her friend had sent those to help her recover, she immediately orders her maids to throw everything away. She refused to accept any help from her rival. She even sends word to Derek that the next day she wants even harsher training. The Rosetta Hall battle was getting very close. It was a major event meant to showcase the strength of noble houses, and she didn't want her house to be looked down on compared to the others. Many noble women placed great importance on wealth, but in Helene's case, it was nothing like that. What she truly felt was envy toward Eileen. Our protagonist was studying magic when he notices his student had arrived very early. He even comments that she came ahead of schedule, but the girl says to skip the small talk. She even asks Derek what he thinks. What do I think about what? She wanted to know his opinion on the progress she had made during those weeks of training. He remains silent for a moment and then says that giving up is also a valid option. Hearing that, she becomes irritated and even asks if he's trying to provoke her. The boy apologizes, saying that wasn't his intention. She had asked him to evaluate her strength, not to insult her by suggesting she should quit. Raising her voice, she says that's not why she hired him. If he was just going to say nonsense, then he should get out of her sight. Then he asks what it matters if she can't win. Being overly obsessed with victory could actually slow her growth, and sometimes accepting defeat with humility might be better. At that moment, he realizes the girl is crying, calling herself pathetic. The boy stays silent, listening to her. Helene admits that she has a habit of speaking badly about Ellen, all because she felt jealous of her friend. She says she's someone full of envy, and even calls herself awful for thinking that way. She admits she envies Ellen deeply because she's an incredible girl, kind, gentle, and also very strong. The poor girl was trembling as she cried, and the worst part was that she held resentment toward her, yet it still seemed like Ellen genuinely cared about her. Through tears, she asks why she has such a ridiculous inferiority complex that just won't go away. She even remembers the moment when she opened up to Derek and confessed these feelings. That's why the thing she wanted most was to defeat Ellen. However, she knew she was still far from achieving that. Our hero, looking at her, realizes that the person Helene hates the most isn't Ellen, it's herself. This battle wasn't driven purely by jealousy or envy. Her only escape from that hatred was overcoming her self-loathing and inferiority complex. With that, he walks past her, saying that the only way for her to feel better is to win, and they would achieve it no matter the cost. He would make sure she defeats Ellen, and hearing that, she agrees, saying that together they will succeed. And just like that, we wrap up the first part of this story, guys. Honestly, it's been really good. If you made it this far, drop the secret word in the comments, Master of Magic, because every comment helps the algorithm push the video to more people. Yeah, feed the algorithm, it's always hungry. If possible, consider becoming a channel member. Members get to watch the video one day early and without ads. I'll leave 2 recommended videos here on the channel that I'm sure you'll enjoy, so I'll see you in the next video. That's it for now, thanks, and see you next time, everyone.